Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us again on another edition of the Jboy Show. The hits just keep on coming. Very excited to bring on a guest. Everybody's going to know had an unbelievable career at the University of Alabama. But first, I do got to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, betonline.ag. Football season's over, but we got MLB coming. You got March Madness coming. The online casino is open 24/7. So head over to betonline.ag, whether you like to do props, parlays, take bets straight up, pleasers, teasers, geezers, whatever they got over there. Make sure you head over to betonline.ag and tell them Jboy sent you. But without further ado, I like to bring on a guy, like I said, well-traveled, won a lot of games, has some great stories, especially from the University of Alabama and the NFL. That's former quarterback for Bear Bryant, the Jets, the Saints, Mr. Richard Todd. Richard, it's an honor to have you on.
Hey, I appreciate y'all having me on. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Well, I want to start, obviously, as your career was unbelievable, but I want to start in high school. You're a quarterback, you're running the wishbone. You got Bear Bryant at Alabama. You're throwing it to a guy that was always able to throw the ball, regardless of what offense you were in. What made you choose Alabama? Can you kind of tell us the story of talking to Bear Bryant, getting recruited by Bear Bryant, and ultimately deciding to go play for the Crimson Tide? Yeah,
it's a funny story. Well, I really was heavily recruited in-state by Alabama and Auburn. That's where I wanted to go, to stay in-state. Pat Sullivan was a quarterback at Auburn back at that time, and they threw the ball a lot. And then Alabama just started the wishbone. So in my high school, we threw the ball a lot. We ran the regular option, not the triple option, and we threw quite a bit. But I actually committed to Auburn.
Wow.
I was going to Auburn just because of the offense, really.
Yeah.
I actually kind of went to Alabama. I had a lot more fun and visited, at the Auburn. And Pat Sullivan was the nicest guy I ever met when I was being recruited. He, kind of treated me like someone equal to him or something. It was kind of neat. The other guys didn't do that. But it just came down, I guess, a little family pressure too. My father got his doctorate.
Yeah.
My family wanted me to go there, and then I wanted to play for Coach Bryant. But I will tell you a funny story. So I was being recruited by a guy named Bob Tyler. He went on to be the head coach of Mississippi State, I think, later on. But he said, well, when you come up and talk to Coach Bryant, ask him if you come here, we're going to throw the ball more. I said, sure. So I walked in there, and he's smoking on his Marlboro and smoking. They didn't have a filter back then or whatever. He didn't use it. And he's smoking, spitting out the cigarette out of his mouth and all. So I asked the question, and he kind of leaned back in his chair, and he took a puff, and he goes, "Okay, so if you come here, are we going to throw the ball more?" And he goes, "No, we're not going to throw the ball more if you come here." And he said, "I had one of the best passers we ever had here at Alabama." I think he was talking about Scott Hunter, and he said, "And we went 6-6. So if you come here, we're going to throw more." He goes, "No." He repeated it again. But
that's hilarious.
It's just, the reason I went to Alabama is to just play for Coach Bryant. He, at that time, like a Saban is at Alabama now. So he's just somebody you wanted to play for.
I can just imagine a young kid walking into Bear Bryant's office asking him, hey, are we going to throw it more or whatever. I just, that scene, I'm sure, is one that you just see in your head over and over again, the way you described it. Obviously, that was a big moment for you, and that's classic Coach Bryant. Sounds like that to me. But Richard, so you go to Alabama. Can you talk about just going in there and getting some playing time? And you guys obviously had a ton of success, but what was it like playing for Coach Bryant? Obviously, the speeches before games, but really, knowing who he was, because we all, and again, I wasn't alive during that time, not trying to age you or anything like that, but, I really try and find out from guys, like you that played for him, really kind of what it was like behind the scenes, because that relationship between the head coach and the players obviously is really personal, because you guys are both in it together. You can both benefit. But what was it like playing for Coach Bryant? And I'm sure you got some pretty funny playing stories, because I heard he could be funny when he wanted to.
Yeah, well, he wasn't really funny when I was around him. But, when I was there in 1972, that was the first year that freshmen could play, and they
wow.
they had a ton of quarterbacks. So as far as varsity, I didn't play, but they did. We did have a freshman team. I think we played 9 games. We got beat by Georgia Tech the first game, and then we beat everybody. They were all SEC guys back then. But so I go my sophomore year, and I go over, and I have a stuttering impediment I've always had my whole life, and I still stutter. But I used to get in the I used to get in the huddle, and I couldn't say 32. I couldn't say the 30. So we had this guy Johnny Davis, and he was a great player. And so I would get outside the huddle, and I go, Johnny, when I say split right, you say 32. He goes, okay. So I'd go split right, and I'd hit him. He'd go 32, 32. And I'd go on 2. So we did that at practice. Once we got in the game, I could speak, but Coach Johnson made me nervous. But they came up and they told me before our last scrimmage, my sophomore year, Mal Moore, who became the athletic director, was my quarterback coach, and he goes, Richard, we're going to redshirt you. And I go, I figured that. So we had the practice, and one of the quarterbacks dislocated his shoulder, and he had already been redshirted. So he came up to me and he goes, Richard, we're not going to redshirt you. And I said, I figured that too. So, so I started playing my sophomore year, and we, back then, and even when I was a senior and started my junior season and started my senior season, I probably played as much my sophomore year as I did my junior or my senior year, because we alternated quarterbacks and we alternated backs. Coach Bryant would say, give me the first team backfield with the second team line.
Really?
And he'd go, give me the third team line with the first team backs. We mixed it up all the time, and we had really a lot of players, and he liked to play a lot of people. In fact, when I was a sophomore, I think I was the second leading rusher on the team. I didn't play that much, but we had 1973, I guess, is when we were the national championship for the UPI Bowl. We got beat by Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, but the UPI Bowl back then didn't care about the bowl games. So the AP made Notre Dame the national championship, and we were the UPI national champions. They still count that.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm guessing he did that to build depth. He would rotate those teams in there to build depth, or was it getting used to playing with each other in case guys got hurt? I know you guys, like you said, had a lot of players, but Richard, something, and you can probably guess who told me this story, but your draft night story, because again, we look at the NFL draft now, and it's this huge ordeal. It's everywhere, even during the pandemic with the virtual stuff at home. Can you just kind of tell us your draft night story, how it happened, the call you got? Because I think people, especially nowadays, who weren't alive back then or didn't see it back then, would be amazed at, you were the 6th overall pick, but I'm going to let you tell the story about how that went down, because I know you wanted to go to Hawaii and somebody told you to go to stay in Mobile, where you went to high school, where you're from, to play in the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, well, it was funny because my senior year, so there were, and you got to understand, my senior year, I started 3 games that I played the whole game. That's basically against Auburn, Tennessee, and the bowl game against Penn State. So, so back, I'm from Mobile. The only place I've ever been to is Clearwater, Florida, where you the beach in Tampa. We had relatives down there. So I get it, back then it was the Honolulu Bowl, whatever they called it, and the Senior Bowl. So I didn't really answer the Senior Bowl. And all of a sudden and it's my senior year, and I'm not even living on campus, and Coach Bryant calls up and said, you need to be here at the office at 9:00 tomorrow morning. I go, and he hangs up. And he just hangs up. You need to be here at 9:00. I walked over. I didn't know. I'm trying to think what I did the last week. If I did anything bad, I can't think of anything at that time. So, I go in the office, and he goes, you haven't answered the Senior Bowl. And I think the guy that ran, his last name was, what was his name? Anyway, I forgot. And he said, well, Coach, I said, I'm from Mobile. I've never been really to Hawaii. I think that'd be a great trip to go there. And he's puffing on a cigarette again, like he always does. Tobacco. And he goes, nope, you're going to go to Senior Bowl. It's your hometown. You need to go there. I think it was Art Schlaster, some Slusher, something lame. So he said, hold on. So he called up the phone. He goes, Art, I got Richard Todd here. Richard, tell him you'll be down there at the Senior Bowl. And I go, yes, sir, I'll be there at the Senior Bowl. And he hangs up the phone, and I go, it was actually the best thing ever, because, I knew Ray Perkins back then, and Ray was the wide receiver coach, and I knew him when I was in college. So I talked to him and I go, what do you think, Ray? You think I'll be drafted? He goes, oh yeah, you'll probably be drafted in the 4th or 5th round, somewhere like that. 'Cause you're a really good athlete. You know, there's places for you to play. You can do different things. I go, great. I just want to get a chance to play. So I played in the Senior Bowl, and we had Steve Largent, we had Mike right in, we had a guy, Sammy White. So I ended up playing a half and threw for like 270 yards, 250. And I think it's still the record. I think it's still the record, to be honest.
You went off. You just went off.
Well, I mean, you know, my first pass was I dropped back 5 yards and hit the running back on a little flare pass, and he got it and went 80 yards.
It was a great thing. It was a heck of a throw on the flare. I still hear about how good of a throw that was.
Yeah. But you know, then they said it's not really the game, it's practice. And
that's true.
You know, I will admit, when I got down there, I was thinking, I said, I can't wait to see all these great quarterbacks they've got. And I'm sitting there watching them, and I'm not going to say who they are. And I'm going like, these guys aren't that good.
Yeah.
I'm going like, if they're good, I think I'm just a little better.
Yeah.
You know, you always high on yourself, but so that worked out good. So you go home, and there was no come to New York. There was none of this big parade they do nowadays for the pigs. So I'm sitting there, and I actually, to be honest, I can't remember if I knew it was a draft the next day or not. I think I went out and had a few drinks with my buddies at Bonhoff's down there or whatever. Yeah. And you know, the phone rings at like 9 o'clock, and I answered it, and it's Lou Holtz, who's coach of the New York Jets. And he goes, Richard, this is Lou Holtz. I go, yes, sir. He goes, we're about to pick you. We're not going to have any trouble signing you. I go, no, sir. And hangs up, and I hang and go back to bed. And then I get up about 11, drinking coffee, and then the sportscaster the sports writer from the Tuscaloosa News calls, and he goes, Richard, congratulations. I go, for what? And he goes, you got drafted. I go, oh, I know. I talked to Lou Holtz this morning. He goes, no, you were the 6th pick in the draft. I go,
oh my gosh.
I was, are you serious? So that's kind of the way that went. It wasn't any big deal. So I called my mom and called my friends, and that's about it. Some of my teammates. And
I can just see you laying in the bed, getting a phone call, answering it from Lou Holtz. Hey man, we're gonna pick you. And nowadays it'd be tears and family members hugging and crying and running around the house, and you just go straight back to bed and then find out that you're the 6th pick in the morning. I think that's such a beautiful story, and I do appreciate you sharing it.
Well, the big difference is back then you didn't sign for 25, 30 million.
Yeah, that is true. Being the 6th, it's a little bit different nowadays with the 6th pick. So you go to the NFL, and you talked about at Alabama the way he would rotate and having multiple quarterbacks. So you go into the NFL. How different was it for you at first, that transition period, that adjustment period? And then, when you're the guy, just how different that is, because at the end of the day, the NFL and the offense had to be a little bit different than what you were used to at Alabama. Kind of how was that? How did you adjust? And was it a pretty seamless transition for you?
No, it was definitely throwing the ball a lot more than reading. When you're running the wishbone, you read the defensive tackle, then you read the defensive end, and you pitch it or keep it. There's three plays. There's 3 plays in one play. So it can lead to a lot. But in pro football, it was just reading the linebackers, reading the safeties. We had the youngest team in pro football for like 4 or 5 years in a row, and we kind of built our way up. But my first year, Joe Willie was there, and so he was a starter. I was hoping he'd stay there a couple of years, and I could learn from him and watch him. But he got hurt like the 5th game, and they kind of threw me in there. But I think it was a little different because I think Lou Holtz, I don't think he really liked the pro game as much as he did college, and he went on to prove that. He went to Notre Dame and won a national championship. He coached at Arkansas and did real well. But I don't think he liked getting on the plane after games and seeing guys drinking beer and smoking cigarettes and doing all that other stuff they do. But it was quite an adjustment, but it was fun. You love football like we all did back then. It was, we had a bunch of young guys. Nobody was really married at that time. We all hung out. We were all a good time.
Yeah, I could see Lou Holtz getting on a plane and be like, guys, I just don't understand why you get on this plane. You guys drinking all these beer, smoking all these cigarettes. I could totally understand why he'd want to go back to college, and he's one of the greats. But I do, Richard, and as we're winding down, I do got to give a shout out real quick to one of our sponsors, eBay. Go to ebay.com/sneakers, whether you want old shoes, new shoes. It doesn't matter, whatever brand you want. We all know eBay's got the best selection out there. So head over to ebay.com/sneakers. They've got a full team of people that will authenticate the shoe. So if you're worried about that type of stuff, if for some reason, in the past you've used somebody else and it hadn't worked out, go to ebay.com/sneakers. I promise you, they'll have the guarantee. It'll be a tag. They'll check the logo, the box. It's all 100, I guess, to use the euphemism nowadays. But so Richard, as we wind down here, and we're here with former Alabama quarterback, NFL quarterback standout, Richard Todd, telling some great stories. The draft night story is absolutely tickles me to death. But so you go to the Saints and you replace Kenny Stabler. How was that for you being an Alabama guy? But there is a note I want to say about the draft. You were actually the last quarterback drafted in the first round at Alabama before Tua Tagovailoa got drafted. That record stood for a really long time, especially at a place like Alabama. That really surprised me.
I know, it's crazy. I think there've been a lot of better quarterbacks than than I was back then that come through. I thought McCarron would go well. I hope Mac Jones. I think he's just phenomenal. He had a great year. But it is kind of strange. I think they look at Alabama and they think they get these guys are just game managers and they've got such great players around him because McCarron had Jones to throw to over in Atlanta and Ridley and all these guys, these pro guys, which is the way I think that they look at. Now, I hope they don't look at Mac Jones like that, but time will tell. Yeah.
Well, and I do got to ask you, having played for Bear Bryant and you're watching what Nick Saban is doing at Alabama, and look, they're different guys, and I know people don't like to compare, but what parallels do you see between Nick Saban and Bear Bryant? Is it personality-wise? Is it structure-wise? Even though the game's totally different and it is hard to compare eras, but do you see any parallels between those two guys, or are they just totally different?
I think when you have great coaches, they've all got to be focused. They got to be able to recruit. They have to. The thing about Coach Bryant, and saying the same thing with Saban, when Coach Bryant was there, I think when I was there, for those 4 years, that I think maybe 9 coaches left that he had that became head coaches. And the same thing with Saban. He brings in great coaches. Back when I signed, I think we signed 48 guys. The thing nowadays with I guess the internet and everything else, and it's just so easy to see guys in California play and get tapes from them.
Mm-hmm.
I think Saban can only sign 25, but he recruits. He recruits all over the country. And I remember a comment he was making when he was being brought into college. He goes, "Why go to the NFL when you get one draft pick, one number one pick, when I can go 8 number one picks?" Which is exactly what he does. Exactly what he does. I mean, it is a different environment. And another thing they've done, Coach Bryant, he threw the ball all over the place when he had Stabler and he had Namath and Bart. Well, I guess he wasn't there when Bart Starr was there, but all these other great quarterbacks, Scott Hunter. But he had a lot of great quarterbacks, and then he wasn't winning, so he jumps to the wishbone. And you got to think of Coach Saban with that defense he had. He always had Big Cody. He had these big guys that just stuff everything, and then they spread everything out. They play against Utah, which I was down at that game, and they just get creamed by spreading everybody out and one-on-one with these big linebackers. They couldn't cover him. So he goes for a smaller defense, quicker defense, and he changes the game too as it goes along.
Well, I think you could almost say the same thing about him offensively as well. I mean, you remember the older Alabama teams, it's true pro style. We're going to go under center. We're going to run the power and counter right at you and run play action, very traditional offense. Now you see him, especially with the Wizard of Oz, that is Steve Sarkisian, the motions, the different sets, being able to go up tempo. Very rarely, but having that ability. I mean, watch Miller Forrestall go in motion and take the snap on a 4th and short. So it's amazing how even the guys that are at the top of their game, the good ones, realize they have to keep evolving to stay up with the times. It's like anything. But last question for you, Richard. I always ask quarterbacks this. What's the one throw that you look back on, if you can, and say, that was the best throw I've ever made? It could have been lucky, or it could have just been great and worked out. I've had quarterbacks tell me it was kind of fluke, but what's the one throw you were making? Could have been in a big game. Shoot, could have been in practice. Doesn't matter, that you were like, that right there was the dime of all dimes.
Oh, I don't. I was lucky a lot of times. I remember we played. I remember we played Miami, and I looked back. I think I threw 4 touchdowns, and I looked back at the game, and there were 2 of the touchdowns were tip balls, and the other one was like a jump ball with my guy was double covered, and Bobby Jones reached up and grabbed it and ran it for a touchdown. So you get lucky, you get good. I'm trying to. I think a lot of the throws to Wesley Walker, he was so fast, and some of those long bombs were just so nice to watch. And he could outrun everybody, and just seemed like it, came in his hands a lot of times.
Yeah, well, you know what they say, even those tip balls, there's no tip ball stat in the stat sheet. That's a completion, baby. That's 6 right there. And
anytime,
yeah, and 55 years from now, they look back at that and they don't know it's a tip ball. They're like, man, Richard Todd went off against Miami. He must have just been drilling it in there. But you were just a superb player, and you're a really humble guy. And I think that's one of the reasons you've been so successful even off the field. But I know I said that was my last question before, but I could not let you go. I heard you're a huge basketball fan, huge Alabama basketball fan. I got to get Nate Oates on the show, but just tell me, watching this team, and how crazy is it now to see Auburn and Alabama both, good at basketball? It's really something we haven't seen.
Yeah. Nate Oates is unbelievable. They just yesterday they extended his contract to 2027. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
He's awesome, but. When I was playing down there, I went to all the games. We had Leon Douglas, Charles Cleveland, Wendell Hudson, T.R. Dunn. I go. I went to all the games. I love those guys. I think we won the SEC championship a couple times while I was down there. But this year's team is just you can't really say they've got one outstanding player. I mean, they've got 4 or 5 guys that score in 10, 15, 20 point game, and they spread it around, but they're playing such good defense. They're playing great defense.
That's the difference.
And I love, the Herb Jones is probably one of the better defenders I've ever seen. We had a guy back when I was in college, T.R. Dunn, and he played 11 years in the league. I think he scored like 4 points a game, but he was one of the better defensive players. They had him out there for defense. They had enough people to shoot, and Herb is like that too. He's just incredible.
And he loves playing defense, and really their defense in transition, I think, is something that's really separated them this year. John Petty actually playing defense when his shot's not going in is a huge difference from last year. It's something we've talked about on the show. But Richard, it's an honor to have you on. I'm going to have to get you back on again when we get closer to football season. I got to get your kind of, thoughts about going into the year, because it could be a crazy year. A lot of people are replacing a lot, but we know how the SEC is. They always reload. I want to thank you guys at home, whether you're in your car, I don't care, wherever watching or listening to the show. We really appreciate you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We got so much more great stuff coming, and we really do appreciate you guys. It's been another edition of Jboy Show, and Jboy's going, gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, technical director Dave Hammock, creative director David Culbertson, audio engineer Feyzan Shareef, production assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, executive producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.